but as can be seen from the state of the road, this one is heavily used. Quite a bit of reed in the canal here, but still passable by boats. While not exactly the hoped-for bonanza, the Grantham Canal did eventually yield a modest return for its shareholders, and at the same time provided a measure of prosperity for the towns and villages in its vicinity. Transport costs for bulk goods such as coal, lime, building materials and agricultural produce were significantly reduced, and markets consequently expanded. One of the villages to benefit was Hickling, its marvellous canal basins just coming into view. Hickling is one of the most attractive venues on the canal, with its wharf and warehouse which were used for transshipping cargoes. Since this video was filmed, campaigning by the Grantham Navigation Association and other groups has resulted in a derelict land grant being made available to restore the next 1.8 miles of canal, sponsored by Nottinghamshire County Council and British Waterways. This tremendous development allowed restoration work to begin along this section at the beginning of 1994, with dredging, clearing of overhanging trees and bank protection being carried out, plus the provision of moorings and a duck ramp at Hickling. Not only that, but the next 3 lowered farm bridges that we see were to be removed and replaced by swing bridges to allow navigation by full-size boats launched or based at Hickling Basin. After 3/4 of a mile of clear canal, we can see the first of the 3 farm bridges as they were, fixed concrete structures obstructing navigation. This one and the next farm bridge are called the Collishore Bridges, presumably after the farmer whose land they gave access to. The pilot lifts the helicopter up and over the power lines and follows the loop of the canal under Clark's Bridge, which is hard to see at this angle but is, and always has been, a surviving traditional brick arch bridge. Coming round the bend, we then get to the second of the Collishore farm bridges. The next farm bridge is called Moors Bridge, the final one to be restored as part of the Hickling project, as just beyond it we can see the River Smite crossing the fields and marking the boundary between Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire. This is the current end of navigation, but for a little extra cost, about another mile of canal could be opened up very easily, as we'll see. The first obstruction is the next low farm bridge, known as Wooden Swing, which is what it could easily be again. Long Clawson Bridge, which is coming up, has enough clearance to get cruisers through it, though there is a small water control weir here, which has been installed by British Waterways to maintain their water levels as a result of the total flow of water down the canal being reduced. The need for these weirs would disappear once full water flow was reinstated. The next small bridge is in the middle of a farm, and it's very muddy and unpleasant here for walkers. We're heading northeastwards now towards Harby, and we have another lowered bridge here on the lane into Hose Village. For much of its length, the canal runs from east to west across the prevailing downwards south to north drainage slope of the land, intercepting a number of pre-existing rivers and streams. The long-established rights to water supplies for irrigation and motive power for mills were protected by the terms of the 1793 Grantham Canal Act, and the canal builders were only permitted to use excess, that is, flood water for their canal. So many of the natural watercourses that crossed the path of the canal had to be culverted under it rather than into it. To supply the canal itself, floodwater had to be collected and stored in reservoirs, especially built for the purpose at Denton and Nipton. Today there are a number of small feeder streams that discharge directly into the canal, but the main water supply for a restored canal will almost certainly have to come from the reservoirs. We pass another farm bridge and then come up to the road from Colston Bassett to Harby, after which is another farm bridge. Here we can see the British Waterways Yard at Harby and the bridge over the canal on the road to Langer. This bridge has enough headroom for small boats but would need to be raised for cruisers. Beyond the road we can see a little footbridge, which will not be too difficult to raise, and we now enter the section used by the canoeists from the Five Villages Youth Centre. This can be seen on the left alongside the rather nice traditional canal bridge. This section is a bit reedy for the canoeists, and it would be helpful to dredge a clear path. The canoeist can only travel a short distance before reaching a farm bridge that shows little sign of use. There's plenty of headroom under the abandoned railway bridge, and then we have another farm bridge which shows signs of occasional use. We could probably remove the first of these farm bridges, then replace the second with a lift bridge to give the canoeists a good run, particularly because the next railway bridge has been removed after the railway was abandoned, and the small bridge that follows it has enough headroom for small boats. We've now reached Plunger village, and the canal is blocked by another lowered bridge before we pass into clear water again. A bit of weed here that would need a little dredging. The next two brick arch bridges are in good condition, but don't lead anywhere, which is why they've survived. All the bridges that have been lowered were modified because they weren't wide enough or strong enough to cope with modern traffic. Along this stretch, the canal seems to pass uncomfortably alongside the now abandoned railway line that helped to kill it. By the mid-19th century, canal traffic up and down the country had dwindled dramatically in the face of fierce competition from the fast-developing rail network. The Grantham Canal was no exception, and in common with many other canal companies, the business was eventually sold out to a rival local railway company. In the hands of the London and North Eastern Railway Company, the Grantham Canal was finally closed to navigation in 1936. It's an irony then that many railways were later to face a similar fate when confronted by competition from road transport, and that this line lies abandoned whilst the canal it destroyed now springs back into life. As the two-part company again, we reach the point at which a gas pipeline crosses the canal, but it has plenty of headroom for full-size boats. As we go round the bend, we have another lowered bridge on the approach to Red Mile, then carry on with clear water on the sweeping curve into Red Mile village. On the left you can see a little hut called a lengthman's hut. A waterways worker was assigned a length of canal to supervise, hence he was called a lengthman, and the huts were where they kept tools and supplies, and had a stove in so they could keep warm and have a brew-up. Red Mile Bridge is right alongside the Peacock Inn and has plenty of headroom for full-size boats, though a pipe can be seen passing over the canal at water level, which will have to be lifted. This is likely to be a very popular stopping-off place for boats. As we leave Red Mile, we can see a large winding hole used to turn barges around in after reaching Red Mile from the Trent. Now passing through the beautiful countryside around Red Mile, the canal is clear and unobstructed for 2 miles, and Red Mile might be another good place to start some boating activities from. During the waterway's commercial use, a less savoury commodity carried by canal boats was the night soil from Nottingham, which was spread as fertiliser across the adjoining fields. In recent times, the discovery of large numbers of broken clay pipe bowls and stems in the fields around the canal was seen as evidence for the earlier existence of a local factory that produced them. However, it now appears more likely that these artifacts are the persistent remains of the original distributed night soil. Human excrement, whilst undoubtedly beneficial for the fertility of the land, must have been a